Hello, everybody, and welcome to our show. My name is Tim Tang from Hughes. Let me start by telling you a little bit about who I am. When my children ask me, Daddy, what is it that you do? I always have to take a little pause because there's a lot of different dimensions to my role. But I think for purposes of today, it's those last three. I am an engineer through and through. I like looking at problems, taking problems apart, trying to understand, and most importantly, how to fix them, how to make things better. I'm also a sociologist. I find human behavior to be fascinating. I'm particularly interested in how to influence and how to change and how to grow and augment performance and the like. And when we put these two things together, engineering and human behavior, I think that sits at the crux of a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about today. How do we think about the digital transformation of an industry? That last one, I'm the father of five. What that basically means is that my most important role in life involves a customer base that is going to be perpetually dissatisfied. And so that is always an ongoing challenge that I eagerly seek to strive to improve. The NACS 2022 show was incredible in Las Vegas. It was outstanding. Over 1,250 exhibits, over 400,000 some square feet of exhibit space. It was 4 days of just incredible, intense effort running from one place to the next place. And my hope today is to try to put some structure to that, to provide some kind of organization to all the chaos of how to think through a lot of and share with you a lot of the key learnings that I took away from that show. It was quite valuable. I've been attending NACS for over a decade now, and every year it never fails to give me something new. And this year was no different than that. I think I walked away with a much more expanded understanding of the C-store industry that I'd like to share with you today. I think perhaps to get started, I think a good place to start is with the pain points that are facing the industry. When we think about all the technology, all the different solutions that are available, it always first starts a good place to start is with what is the problem that we're dealing with? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? And there are a number to think of. There's a war going on that has disrupted our economy. There's inflation that has elevated the cost of running a C-store. There is a massive labor shortage that is making it very difficult to find people, to hire people, to keep people. And we're going to talk quite a bit about that because that seemed to be kind of one of the mainstays that seemed to be hanging over a lot of the conversations, a lot of the discussions, a lot of the keynotes that I participated in at the NACS. And not to be ignored, there's also a lot of competition. There's a lot of, when it comes to the industry of convenience, there are the groceries, the QSRs, the dollar stores. There is a lot of interest in becoming, from a retail perspective, that is pressuring the convenience store industry in terms of its customer base, its market share, its fight for its share of wallet and share of stomach, even too as well. I think one of the most important ways to think about is this redefinition of convenience. When we look at some of the big tech companies, when we look at some of the big retailers and how they are striving to become more and more convenient to their customers, it starts to change the calculus, if you will, of kind of what our industry is going to represent and going to mean to the consumer. What happens when you can have the entire inventory of a big box retailer available to you within an hour? How are you going to think about your opportunity to engage with your consumers and in that type of context? What are the leverage points that as a C-store we have over the big techs, over the big box retailers and the like? So with all of these changes, all these pain points, kind of one of the ways to think about them is to consider the impacts of each one of these, think through the consequences of each of these, and then consider the context of the C-store industry at large. This is the framework that I use to help organize my thinking in terms of what solutions are going to make the most difference. What are the needs of the industry at like? And so when I think about war, I think about the increased cybersecurity threats that are attacking C-stores. The higher cost of fuel means that it's going to be fewer trips to the C-stores. Cost of grain, a more difficult fight for a much smaller share of wallet in a large extent. Inflation, it means that for the consumer, a less discretionary spend. For the retailer, it's going to be more expensive to get the goods, to sell the goods, and to operate the stores. And from just a complete operation, cost of goods operations perspective. The labor shortage is the one that, we have over 2 million people who have left the market. And, for the industry, there are those who have left that aren't coming back. So it's not simply a matter of trying to rehire people who left pre-COVID. It's thinking about how do we reinvent our business such that we can operate with the resources we have. And then we've talked about the competitive pressures too as well. So consequentially, it's going to be a burden, a challenge as it relates to store sales. It's going to be and it's going to be a smaller margin of success to effectively operate a C-store from a P&L perspective. And then in this context, the C-store industry specifically has a substantial amount of tech debt that it's dealing with too as well. So when we think about the C-store industry, the convenience store industry, in comparison to say retail and the restaurant industry, we are dealing with technology that is decades old. When you think about, the fuel pump, the site controllers and the like, there's a lot of technology there that has been sitting there for decades, and it continues to work. And there are dynamics and aspects of the C-store industry when we think about the point of sale and the the very niche nature of what it is to operate and run a C-store, to sell fuel, to dispense fuel. Those constraints kind of limit and put boundary conditions around some of the changes and some of our abilities to kind of affect solutions too as well. And so we're going to kind of talk through a number of these kind of issues. Before I go too further, I think one of the helpful things for me is as I start to think through how do we consider engaging with the C-stores. And what I'm going to share with you today is just a lot of people stories, to be honest with you. My experience with NACS this year, in contrast to previous years, was very much centered around people. I was very interested in trying to understand their stories, their pain points, and their needs, and how they see the market too as well, from a variety of different perspectives. And I'll share with you as we kind of go through this presentation some of the perspectives. But this first one is Lonnie McWhorter of 36 Lynn Refuel Station. He's a good friend of mine, and he was very generous with his time and kind of walking me through he's a single site owner, and walking through his operations and what it means for him to be a C-store operator, what it means for him to serve his customers and encourage and manage his employees, how he curates his inventory to kind of provide a healthy alternative to his community. So this was my visit with him was a very helpful reset, if you will. It's very easy to get caught up in all the technologies and all the different solutions that are out there. It was good to get a reality check of saying, this is what it means to be a single site C-store operator and what it means to run a business and to serve your local community. So with that context, let's get into NACS. NACS, the first session that I sat in on was the Connexus one, looking at the technology roadmap that Connexus and NACS actually present to the industry. The three gentlemen there are Gray Taylor from Connexus, Doug New from Nuria Energy, and Don Emery from CHS. And I will tell you that their presentation, it was early, 8 o'clock in the morning, but it was a fantastic way to start NACS because it provided a rich overview on so many different dimensions of the C-store business, and then kind of highlighted and attempted to basically provide a timeline, looking at different aspects, specifically the tech stack, the consumer, the store ops, mobility, food services, enterprise, looking at different aspects of the C-store business, and then trying to characterize it over a time period from now until 1 to 3 years, 2 to 5 years, and 4 years out. And I think that provides kind of a helpful structure as we think through a technology strategy for the C-store industry. We want to respect the fact that this industry, on one hand, has changed dramatically in terms of its ability to engage with customers. or portions of it have changed dramatically in terms of its engagement and its customer experience. And on the other side, it hasn't changed. It has got a set of inertia that has kept a lot of how we do business, of the business of gas, cokes, and smokes, has essentially kind of maintained status quo in some aspects, in some regards. And so we want to be thinking through this kind of storyline. Um, Spoke earlier about the labor shortage, and so I think that's probably a good place to start in terms of thinking about going back to one of the main challenges of this industry and many other industries. In the privilege of my role is to look at other industries like the restaurant and retail industry as well, and everyone is talking about a labor shortage because everyone is fighting for the same frontline talent to a large extent. And we're in an industry, I think one of the big takeaways where that onboarding and that training of the customer is a matter of a competitive advantage. Your ability to get a new, first find an employee, make an offer, and get and have them accept it. The very next piece, that onboarding piece, how long it takes for them to become productive and fruitful is not only a matter of competitive advantage, it impacts everything. Their ability to contribute to the business of the C-store, their satisfaction as an employee too as well. And so how we can quickly get them up to speed so that they can be competent in their roles and they can take personal satisfaction in the roles. Increases the probability that they'll stick around for 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days to a large extent. And so a lot of the things that I was looking for is, what are some of the most effective ways to onboard employees? I think one of the interesting things, this is Lindsay Wagner from the Training Online, RTO, is the idea of training in bite-sized chunks, 3 minutes, 5 minutes at a time, leveraging the millennial propensities, Gen Z's interest in social media, how they consume social media, a couple minutes at a time, and then they can do it for hours. Why not do our C-store training in the same kind of fashions, a few minutes at a time, and let it speak for itself, and let our employees binge watch our training assets, make it fun, make it interesting, and make it entertaining. The more our employees choose to do training, the quicker, the more comfortable they are with the training, the more effective they're going to be in terms of producing and more productive they're going to be in our business. It's no surprise that self-checkout got front and center stage in many cases. When you can't find enough employees, the next alternative is to try to find a way to help the customer then take care of themselves, to take whatever limited employees and try to magnify them. How can one employee do the work of 3 or 4 employees? Well, it'll be these kind of self-checkout registers. When I talked to a number of the POS providers, I was asking them, what's selling right now? What are C-store operators buying? It seemed pretty consistent across the board. Any kind of self-checkout, any kind of kiosk solution, any kind of offering that could help a customer take care of themselves seem to be front and center and seem to gain a dominant share of the time. This is the Mashgin solution with the computer vision checkout. You just throw your items on there, it detects what the items are, and then it automatically rings up the bill and lets you swipe out and check out. I'm sure you've seen these things in a number of C-stores, actually probably a number of non-C-store places. They're particularly popular in addition at airports and the like. But it's these kinds of solutions to not only improve the customer experience and allow them to take care of themselves, but allow an individual employee now to basically run the store without having to kind of man the stations and the like. One of the interesting things that I saw as I kind of walked through the trade show is this, what I would characterize as this mainstream momentum, if you will, in terms of computer vision. I was particularly surprised at how many different companies were applying computer vision analytics in the solutions. It's one thing when you get very niche players like AI, machine learning type startups playing in computer visions. These were more mainstream solutions. And each one of these slides that I'm showing you, this is kind of a sampling. These are a kind of a taste, if you will, of of the variety of solutions. I counted 6 different technology solutions that were leveraging kind of computer vision analytics in a variety of different types of play. It's the kind of stuff of where it's trying to detect fraud at the point of sale system. It's trying to manage your employees to understand kind of what is it that they're doing in the store. Are they engaging with your customers, or are they hiding in the back room? Are they effective in keeping and maintaining the stock in the shelves and the like? Are they doing dangerous things like leaving the back door open, or are they stacking up things in front of the emergency exit? So there's a number of compliance issues. There's a number of questions about improving store operations and improving engagement with the customers and the like. And so I saw a variety of different plays as it related to computer vision. And I think that's it was intriguing to see it go from, it's been around for a while, but now it's intriguing to see it actually spread. It's intriguing to see more and more different solution providers bringing solutions that are taking this mainstay now and operationalizing it and getting some business value out of it. The the because of in addition to the challenges of finding frontline labor, there's another question of how do I find managers, store managers? And it's not just a matter of finding the entry level employees. It's also a question of how do I find the store manager or the district manager or the regional manager and the like. And that's an individual that needs more experience, 5 years, 10 years in the role. And the question now that it begs is, how do we make running a C-store easier? How do we simplify it so that it doesn't take somebody with 5 years or 10 years of experience, because you can't find people with 5 years or 10 years of experience in terms of managing a C-store. And what was really interesting here, this is Pat Lewis from KRS, is how they're using data and thinking about all the different data streams that are available to C-store operators, and then operationalizing it, visualizing it into kind of a virtual store manager role. The goal and the objective here is to take all these different data streams that you have available to you, everything from the tank gauge, the point of sale, the people counter, the video surveillance solutions, and the like, and being able to consolidate all that data and be able to operationalize it so that somebody, perhaps fresh out of school, fresh out of college, can step up and take on the role of and operate as a store manager with the competency of somebody who has 5-10 years of experience. I've been thinking quite hard about how do I convey this, and want to respect a lot of a lot of the dashboards are somewhat proprietary and the like. But I was just thinking, even in our own business here at Hughes, we've got lots of dashboards. We've got an amazing ability to see inside our business. And it does take some training and some expertise to understand the beauty of what's going on, what the pictures are telling in terms about our infrastructure as it relates to the performance of the network, the packet loss, and the latency. And that's going to take time. And I'm not saying that these things need to go away. These things are quite valuable as a troubleshooting tool. But there is a way to simplify it. There is a way to sit there and say, hey, the blue area is what's normal, and the green area is what the green line is. It's what's happening right now. And that little red dot in the middle of the screen, or the red dot at the top corner, that's when the normal stuff is not normal. Or sorry, the stuff that's actually happening in the store is not fitting what's normal. That's the indicator that something's wrong. And that's the point where you as a store manager need to intervene and try to understand, why are we not performing to our normal capabilities and behaviors? And so just an idea of how to think about, how do we simplify the role of a C-store manager? How do we take all the different data streams? First, how do we visualize them? And then how do we simplify them into actionable insights so that somebody with a modest amount of expertise, a modest amount of experience, can actually perform the job with the same level of competency of a 5-year, 10-year seasoned store manager that we are having great difficulty finding and hiring right now too as well. Some of the other things that come up when we think about like a high turnover type environment, some of the other impacts that will hit us is this reality that we are resigned to the fact that turnover is just going to be a continual reality in today's commercial environment. And there's some implications there too as well. That means that as people are constantly turning over, it's very easy for things like your permits to sell alcohol to fall through the cracks and the like. This is Eva Strasberger, and as a former kind of C-store operator, the challenges and the problems that they were running with is that you have tobacco license, you have permits and like that are required to be continually updated and the like. And if you have a constant continual turnover of your frontline employees and your store managers, there's a high possibility that something's going to fall through the cracks. How do we automate this? How do we get the paperwork out of the C-store? I think that was kind of probably one of the big themes that I heard over and over and over again. What's exciting is that some of the major brands are even looking at, how do I get rid of the store manager's office altogether, so that can be converted into real estate, because no C-store has got enough real estate for sales. So how do I simplify that job? How do I get all the paperwork out of the C-store so that it can be focused on serving the customers and selling to the customers, and everything else gets taken care of itself? And I think this was an interesting example of how just take something like the alcohol permits or whatever else the case may be, can be managed and in an automated type fashions, so that if there is turnover of that frontline employee, turnover of that store manager, it's the system, the stability of the store operations isn't dependent on the people, on the individual. It's dependent on a system that's going to stay there, that's not going to get turned over. You don't turn over your back end infrastructure, your back office systems. Those systems are stable. Those systems are going to serve as a foundation that you can count on. Speaking and talking about data, I think probably one of my favorite presentations, at NACS, the one that kind of opened my eyes to the business value of data it was really around the retail elements of it. The idea here is we are going back to some of the pain points in the industry. It's not business as usual, right? We have some meaningful pain points when you factor in particularly inflation and the cost of just how everything is so much more expensive. You add inflation and then you add a disrupted supply chain, and now you've got a challenge of saying, how do I continue to operate a C-store profitably? This presentation by NRS, Susie Silliman and Brandon Thurber really woke me up to, if you understand where the opportunities are, if you understand what people are buying and how they are buying, it can give you a roadmap, a product strategy in terms of what things to curate in your inventory, what things can help drive your business. The first slide there talks about the value of the tortillas and how they're actually more popular, and they have a higher sales velocity than just normal bread buns and the like. But some of the more interesting things is that when you look at your retail data and looking at some of the correlations that are available to you, and what this speaks to is the power of confederated data. In other words, for one C-store operator gets one view of their world. What's interesting about NRS and other companies like it too as well, is the idea of looking at it from an industry perspective, looking at it not just from a single store perspective. Your store is one view of the world, but there's 150,000 C-stores in North America, and you're missing out on 149,999 other perspectives if you're only looking at your own data. And so these kinds of insights, that batteries are just as popular, are comparable to, more popular than Nerds and 7-Up, or that ramen, when you sell ramen, it doesn't typically sell by itself. It's usually accompanied with something else in the basket. These kinds of insights won't come out necessarily from just looking at a single store's view of their point of sale transaction data. You need more access to data, a bigger view of what's going on in the world in terms of what's available to you. So it's, when we look at the value of data, it's not just a matter of looking at your data and understanding what it says about your store. It's looking at data from an industry perspective and understanding what it says about what it can guide you in terms of how you can operate your stores. There's a the more data you have, the more access to data you have, the more informed you'll be in terms of how you engage with your, be able to engage with your customers. So speaking of data, one of the interesting things that I saw, this is it's not only access to data and the variety and types of data. Sorry, I should say it's the what I call it, or what is often said, the democratization of data. And what I mean by this is that it's not enough to have your data. It's not enough to be able to see data from across the industry. It's now the next piece of the data storyline, if you will, is giving your people actionable and operational access to that data. And that's what we mean by the democratization of data. This is Brian McManus from KRS, and I think one of the interesting and intriguing things that they're doing that I saw in their solution is this idea of using natural language processing to be able to ask questions of the system to understand what's going on in the business. So for store 123, what are the top selling products? That's lots of people need to understand that. Not a lot of people have the nuanced SQL capabilities to, or business analyst skills to do that. And so the idea is to say that if I take a natural language process to a natural question saying, I'd like to know where my losses are at store 254 last month compared to this month. If I can write those questions down and make access to the data that simple, now I have a dramatic ability to have the whole organization to start to leverage data. One of the big challenges when it comes to data that was highlighted throughout the event as I talked to a variety of resources is how do you create a culture of using data, trusting the data insights from that you're getting about your business. And that's not an easy thing. And in part because there's so few people who have access and the ability to use the data. And so if we can make data more accessible by simplifying it, taking out the technical requirements and giving more people, even the admin people who are answering the phones, the ability to answer basic questions about the business through natural language queries, it will dramatically elevate not only the ability to use data, but the culture of data throughout the organization and the ability to gain some business benefit from that. You know, and yes, data was very much on my mind because I think from an AI and ML perspective, it's one of those things that I see as the ability to figure out how do we operate in this constrained environment. This is a picture of what I found curious here is that even the ATG companies are getting into the data business. They've always been in the visualizing inventory, fuel inventories, and the like. What I find to be interesting now is that they is this next step, if you will, of correlating their ATG data with their point of sale data and looking for the business insights now, from understanding how inventory is moving to understand how that correlates and translates into sales at the C-store. I think this is the kind of next level of how we're going to operate in the C-store industry. That it's not just a matter of looking at our tank gauges and trying to manage our inventory, but it's how to operationalize the movements of fuel inventory in our systems so that we can more effectively correlate with our retail sales. If the profitability is in the store, then how do we enhance that profitability by getting some greater understanding of the correlation between the retail sales and the movement of fuel through as well. So I think it's begging for we've always had ATG data, we've always had POS data. What's kind of interesting now is to see ATG companies start to try to attempt to solve and correlate those capabilities on behalf of the C-store industry. As we talk about technology in the C-store, you have to talk about point of sale. As much as I would share with you that whenever I go to a C-store event, whatever it may be, a webinar, a Connexus event, a workshop, or whatever the case may be, the point of sale, even at NACS too as well, never fails to stir an incredibly emotional response. There's just so much frustration with the mainstay players in this space in terms of just how difficult it is to get the POS to do the things that operators need to do. It is the one common constraint I think that is shared by so many operators and the like. I think what I was fascinated and trying to understand is how is this changing? What other alternative opportunities are emerging on that POS front? And I do see a lot of interesting changes in my engagements with operators. Some are taking the do-it-yourself route. They're saying if the mainstay operators are going to take too long, then we're just going to have to bite the bullet and build our own POS. Then you see a kind of another category of POS providers that are coming up. They're hungry. They are leveraging all the advantages of the cloud, and they are eager to kind of try to meet the need and the like. So I think the POS space is something that is worthy of continued attention. It obviously is probably the single most defining factor in terms of how quickly the C-store business can move. I do see a lot of common similarities with other industries that have a very old tech stack. Take banking, for example. Similar kind of scenario where you've got the central part of your tech stack just simply doesn't change fast enough. But you see a lot of strategies that I see in the C-store industry of trying to build around it. So you look at either A, hungry upstarts bringing out another generation of point of sales, or B, another kind of approach of trying to build around that's tech stack to compensate for the lack of or the slowness of the innovation that people are looking at. And that leads to a nice story of, where when we talk about innovation, the role of standards and the need for standards in the C-store industry. This was just a short video interview that I did with Linda Toth, and talking to her about how standards are so critical to this industry. 150,000 C-stores in North America, 90,000 of them are single store operators. So how does 90,000 operators get together to leverage their weight in the industry? It's not going to be a onesie, twosie type basis. It's going to be 90,000 operators asking for the same thing. And how do we get 90,000 operators to ask for the same things? You have to have standards. So there are certainly bigger brands and bigger players that can, wave tens of thousands of locations in front of vendors and saying, I need you to integrate this, and they'll get the integrations they're looking for. But for the vast majority of the C-store industry, it's going to be a play towards standards. It's individual operators together as a consortium coming together and saying, we want the same thing. We want the same thing from the vendor community. And it's enabling. It's an enabler. It's not a forcing. Well, it can be a forcing function, but it's an enabling the vendor community to be able to build solutions one time and meet the needs of the masses, as opposed to trying to build solutions only for those who are big enough to warrant the individual attention, the custom solutions that are out there. So it's a win-win for the individual operators, it's a win for the vendor community, and it's an ability, an accelerator to kind of move the industry forward. The C-store industry is lagging behind. When you look at the past few years, look at what happened over COVID, particularly in the restaurant industry. It's outstanding to see the magnitude of technology innovation that took place in the restaurant industry because they had no choice, right? All the QR codes, curbside delivery, mobile orders, engagement with the DSPs, all of that activity. So many people talked about the 5-10 years of development taking place in 3-5 weeks. In a large sense, the restaurant industry as an industry, went through a massive digital transformation over the past couple of years. The C-store industry, not so much, but certainly parts of the industry did. But as a whole, as a community of 150,000 members in North America, for the most part, didn't go through that same kind of transition. And so there are some meaningful things that we need to think about as an industry in terms of how do we make up that gap then? Because, when we think about where is the most profitable part of the C-store industry, it's shifting from the tobacco products to the hot prepared foods, which puts the C-store industry directly in competition with the QSR and the restaurant industry. And so in order to succeed in that competition, the most outstanding fact that gets highlighted at every NACS is the percentage. 30.8% this year. The number's gone over 30% now. Over 30.8% of C-store customers will go to a QSR within 30 minutes of their trip to the C-store. It's $200 billion of leakage out of the C-store industry. And it begs the question of, okay, so how, as an industry, will the C-store industry be able to compete with the restaurant industry? And if the restaurant industry went through this dramatic digital transformation, we know that the C-store industry is going to need that too as well. And standards play a huge role in being able to accelerate the industry's abilities. So when we think about the things that are holding the industry back in terms of its tech debt and the like, these are the things that we're going to want to be thinking about as always. In terms of, these are the problems that need to be solved in order for us to be successful. I tell you that I encourage you, if you're a C-store operator, to join Connexus, to participate in Connexus. It's the opportunity to learn not only from your peers, but it's an opportunity to come together and develop and build solutions as a industry, as a community too as well. This was an interview that I did with Gray Taylor, and that is always an incredible experience in terms of just how his mind thinks about the industry and kind of what he's seen in terms of it. It was remarkable at the early part of my interview with him. He opened up with, "We don't have enough data." And it's like, how can you say we don't have enough data? And his point was that so much of the data in the C-store industry is on paper. It's not digitized. And if it's not digitized, you're not going to be able to take advantage of it. And so there is a need for the industry to change on that front. When you look at payments and how C-store operators, how the consumer is changing with their attitude of payments, moving away from the typical credit card, which, by the way, also got front and center. It always gets front and center, the swipe fees at NACS. But the movement of the consumer to these alternative payments like Apple Pay, Venmo, and the like is going to continue to create opportunities for the industry to pivot. And these changes in the consumer's behavior are very necessary and very indicative of the trends that operators are going to want to prepare for them too as well. In the restaurant community, I'm already seeing a number of restaurants start to take Venmo payments too as well, which is an early indicator, I think, of where the consumer is going to be headed to as well. The activity around digital identity, this idea of showing your driver's license to a C-store operator who only needs to know that you're over 21 to buy the tobacco or buy the age specific products. That, in our age of data privacy, is going to be, is probably if you were to put your finger on the next place of where the C-store industry and the credit card companies are going to clash, it'll be around that digital identity. It'll be around who's going to be able to validate that the person is a legitimate purchaser of these vaping products, that they haven't exceeded their quota and the like. And so digital identity continues to get front of mind. And I think what's going to be very interesting in this next year and the year after is these solutions are maturing. Operators are starting to embrace them, incorporate them into their solutions. I'm waiting for the credit card companies to awaken to the threat and to see what happens when they or the big tech companies come in. That was one of the other things that Gray rated. What happens when the Apples and the Googles of the world come in and attempt to command control over digital identity too as well. So I think when I think about what are the things that we need to be paying attention, looking forward thinking in terms of what's coming, it's identity, and actually identity, how it affects cybersecurity too as well. If we can understand who the person is, we look at, what are the biggest threats that are facing C-store? It's ransomware. It's malware being installed on the PCs. How do we protect against that? Well, if we can understand who the person is and know for sure that this is a trusted individual, then we'll know that it's safe to click on that link, or know that it's not safe to click on those links too as well. And so identity and cybersecurity, they go hand in hand. How do we protect the store from ransomware? If we get a better understanding of where the data is coming from and who can be trusted and who cannot be trusted too as well. I would be remiss if I said that didn't have didn't talk about AI and machine learning, right? AI and machine learning is everywhere in terms of its application and its use in the world. This is an interview that I did with Spark Cognition's CTO, Sridhar Sudarsan, and it's intriguing if you haven't had the opportunity, I encourage you to take a look. But it's intriguing to see where the operationalization of AI machine learning is taking place. A lot of it speaks to kind of some of the things that we talked about earlier in terms of the virtual store manager. How do I know that my employees are performing their jobs to the way they should be? But then there are other questions of like, how can I just make the job easier? How can I, using the security cameras that are already in the store, just help my employees understand that, hey, we're running low on sparkling water, or we're running low on that beer or this beer or whatever the case may be. To be able to know from a visual perspective and leverage all the capabilities, there's some rather remarkable kind of use cases that are explored. But his advice, I think, was interesting is that, as a CTO of an AI machine learning billion-dollar company, his thinking process, his thought process as it relates to these projects, you start with the business outcomes. You start and you work from there. It's not shiny toys looking for a problem to solve, but it's business outcomes, working back from the business outcome, the problem that you're trying to solve in the store, to the data feeds that you have available to you. In many cases, you won't have enough data, and how to supplement those data feeds, and then to the engines that you need to build, or that may need to be built or repurposed in order to achieve the business outcomes that you're looking for. It's actually not as complicated as one might imagine it to be. And so I think as the industry, as the market for AI and machine learning seems to be maturing, it's becoming far more accessible now. It's more available in terms of helping operators be able to take advantage of some of these kind of newer technologies, even as complicated or intimidating as they may seem. It really is now getting more simplified in terms of our ability to use it. When I think about a big takeaway in terms of the C-store industry, with all the problems and the pain points that we've talked about, and then in light of all the technologies and the different solutions that are out there, it's interesting to see what NACS is doing as a industry to try to help the C-store operators, and kind of where their starting point is. The C-store industry as a whole has an enormous amount of tech debt, as kind of mentioned earlier, which means that there's a practical limit on what new technologies can be employed, or the stages at which they might be employed. So then it begs the next question of, well, what do you do then? And I thought what I found to be fascinating and very interesting is NACS's announcement of Thriver. It's basically, trying to meet the C-store industry's need to get started on its digital transformation journey. All these great technologies, where do you get started as a C-store operator in terms of building your business? Well, as an industry, great, I want to very much acknowledge that lots of great brands out there, big brands out there doing tremendous things. But as an industry, 150,000 C-stores in North America, 90,000 of them independently operated. As an industry, we're lagging from a tech debt perspective. So what's the first thing that we can do? And I think that the NACS Thriver makes an enormous amount of sense. It's basically saying that you have to build your business. What's the saying goes? Sales creates a space for a lot of leads to a lot of forgiveness, can forgive a lot of sins, or whatever that saying is going. If we can create more sales in the C-store industry, then we can create more capacity for digital transformation to embrace all these wonderful technologies that are available to these and the like. And so it begins by making your store available to your customer base. So many customers today are finding the places they want to shop online, and yet so many C-stores don't show up. Lori Stillman does this great video at NACS every year where she stands in front of a C-store and does a search for coffee in front of the coffee machine. And Google tells her to go 2 miles away to a nearby Starbucks. Or she does a search for donuts in front of the donut stand in a C-store, and it tells her to go to Dunkin' Donuts 5 miles away. Or she does a search for an ATM in front of the ATM in the C-store, and it tells her to go to some local bank or whatever the case may be. C stores are not showing up in search, and if they don't show up in search, then they won't become part of the destination in the planning for your consumer. That it's missing out on the ability to reach the consumer before they've left their home. And so the idea is, and so I think what I interpret from NACS's play in this, and what I found to be fascinating is that for the C-store industry, then as a whole, to elevate our ability, our competitive capabilities against all these other competing industries, it's a matter of search, social engagement, and reputation management. Being able to do the things that first you show up for your consumers when they start looking for ATMs, coffee, cigarettes, or whatever the case may be. And you show up when they ask Google, where do I go for a cup of coffee? And then social, where you can actually kind of engage and embrace with your customer base to start nurturing that engine. It's the most cost-effective way to build a customer base, to build and encourage loyalty with your customers. And then the reputation management. And that's what I found fascinating by Thriver. It seems like if we were to say, what is the next step for the C-store industry as a whole? It would be Thriver. It would be basically upping our search and social game so that we have developed these competencies so that customers can first find us. And if they can find us, then they can buy from us. And if they buy from us, then we can create the capacity to embrace all these other solutions that are coming through. So I wanted to leave you with kind of one thought, as I kind of walked away from NACS, and I know we covered a lot of ground and a lot of different things. Is this idea of finding the leaks in your business, and this is maybe a statement on kind of many different dimensions, right? It's the practical leaks of saying, what parts of my business are inefficient? What parts of my business from a labor, how can I improve my labor management? How can I improve my employee, my inventory management and the like? How can I reduce my loss and the like? How can I preserve or enhance my customer experience? Find out all those aspects of your business that are causing leaks, that are taking away from your business. As we start to think about how digitally dependent the C-store industry has become, my encouragement to you is to start thinking about that infrastructure that supports the digital foundation for all these capabilities. Think about all the things that are needed to run a C-store. Think about all the things that are needed to engage with your customers, to support your employees, all those cloud-based applications. That network connection into that C-store for so many has become a single point of failure. It has become a bottleneck that has constrained a C-store ability to run the business, operate the business, engage with their customers and the like. So many C-stores are using consumer-grade connections to try to drive an enterprise-grade business, and it doesn't work. And when you think about the magnitude of the digital side of business, yes, you can do credit card transactions offline. There's no such thing as an offline loyalty redemption. There's no such thing as an offline mobile order. So it's the internet is interfering with your ability to engage and transact with your customers. And this consumer grade, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, isn't good enough. It's not good enough for you at home. It gets irritating when it goes too slow at home, but it's devastating when it happens with your business too as well. And so my encouragement is find the leaks, find the places of your business that are interfering with your ability to engage. One of the ones that I will tell you, this was probably one of the first conversations that I had, and I leave you with this because it was just one of the most wonderful things that I learned about. It's the impact of power on the C-store. They had no idea that, because of all the machinery, all the compressors in the freezers, all the mixers, all the rollers and everything, C-stores are very dirty power environments. And what that translates into is, well, it translates into data that gets corrupted. A bit gets flipped in your point of sale or your back office. Why is it that your numbers don't consolidate? It may be that you recorded the sales transaction correctly, and then you get a power surge, and it actually messes with the record of your transaction. And so, these are the things that I think that are outstanding as you think about what are the pain points and what are some of the challenges. You want to start thinking about what kinds of solutions, how can I improve? So my most interesting takeaway that I walked away with is I just had no idea. I had no idea that if your applications are locking up for no reason, if your machinery is failing for no reason, or failing at a higher frequency than everybody else's, first place you want to start looking for is your power. Clean up the power to your store, and you might be able to improve the operational application stability and the reliability of your data, as well as the longevity of your hardware or your equipment. And I will leave you with just kind of one word about Hughes. We are a managed services company. The reason we do this kind of webinar and the like is we're trying to make technology easier for the operator. From a Hughes perspective, we have a whole portfolio of managed network services, broadband services, cybersecurity, SD-WAN services, even digital menu boards and voice over IP and Wi-Fi service. The whole idea is to say that technology is very quite powerful in terms of its ability to engage with an industry, but at the same point, it's complicated. It's tough to operate successfully at scale, and that requires a very specific type of core competence. And so the reason why I spend so much time trying to understand where does technology actually make a difference, that's really in the spirit of saying, how can I make technology easier? So if you have the opportunity, I encourage you to check out some of these other resources and the like. The Hughes.com retail petroleum page carries a lot of our insights in the space. So if you're interested in some of the video interviews that I kind of talked about today, they will show up over there on that page. We're in the process of producing them right now. I encourage you to check out my my digital twin, if you will, at Hughes.com Tim Tang. That's where a lot of the executive insights and video, not only for retail petroleum, but also for the restaurant industry. And so if you want to see how the restaurant industry is trying to compete with the C-store industry and compete with grocery and others, that might be interesting to you as well. I invite you to join me on LinkedIn. I very much appreciate the opportunity to continue this conversation and the like, and then my email is there at the base there too as well. And that concludes our presentation today. Thank you very much for participating, and I look forward to future opportunities to engage. I'll just leave you with this one final thought. As you can see, I spent a lot of my time trying to understand where the solutions are that will make the most difference in this industry. And if you need help with that, let me know. I'd be more than happy to kind of help you vet solutions and share with you solutions that I have been working. This was a small sampling of the various providers that I've engaged with. There's a lot that we can learn from each other. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.